Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay, galloping all the way, great big star on his chest. Out from all of the rest, fastest gun in the West.
And we are live, Rerun Zone Live. Welcome to our first live broadcast, guys. I'm getting a little bit of echo here. I hope it's not coming through on the stream. Let me just adjust this a little bit. All right. Let me know if you can hear me okay out there, if the video's all right. This is my first live stream, so it may be a little hit or miss. I'm not really sure. It might be a little buggy. I'm still getting used to the software, so we'll see how it goes. But let me know how it's coming through for you guys out there. So I wanted to talk about when I was growing up. I was born in 1954, and I don't really remember too much about the 50s television, but one of the first things I remember was watching the Flintstones. Okay, Debbie, thanks for letting me know you don't hear an echo. Everything seems okay. Beautiful, perfect. Thank you very much. So when I was growing up, my first TV memories were the Flintstones, and I seem to remember. In my memory, it was in 1959, but it was actually 1960, September of 1960, when the Flintstones first came on. They did do a pilot episode back in '59, which was to sell the series to the network. It was actually called the Flagstones, apparently, and they did a short video on it. It's available on YouTube if anybody wants to see it. So the Flintstones ran from 1960 to 1966. It was on for 6 seasons, and it was the first primetime cartoon, and it lasted for 6 full years. It was a great show. It was created and produced by William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, who did a lot of cartoons at the time. I grew up on their cartoons. Huckleberry Hound, you saw the intro with Quick Draw McGraw. It was great stuff. Now, originally, Fred Flintstone was voiced by Alan Reed, and Wilma by Gene Vanderpill, and then the great Mel Blanc did Barney Rubble, and Bea Benaderet was the original Betty. If you ever watched Petticoat Junction, you'll know Bea Benaderet was the owner of the Shady Rest Hotel. She was great. But she stopped doing the voice in 1964, and it was taken over by Jerry Johnson. So a lot of great people worked on the show, on the Flintstones, and they had quite a few guest stars. Let me see. So, at the same time, when they were developing the Flintstones, they weren't sure what they wanted to do with it. They weren't sure if they were going to do like a prehistoric. If you go into, I like to use IMDb a lot. There's a lot of good trivia stuff on there for anybody that wants to look some of this stuff up. So if you go onto the Flintstones IMDb page and you go into trivia, it says here that Fred and Wilma Flintstone were the first animated married couple ever shown on American television in the same bed together, which is a pretty cool fact. They may have been mistaken as the first couple ever shown in bed together on any American TV show, but that title goes to Mary Kay and Johnny, which was in 1947. I mentioned that in another one of my videos. William Hanna also at the time wanted to do a family-style series, but he and Joseph Barbera couldn't agree on the setting or the costuming. Suddenly, Hanna exclaimed, "Let's do it in a caveman setting." They won't wear clothes, they'll just wear animal skins. After that great idea, everything from then on perfectly fell into place. And that was the Flintstones. The Flintstones was great. The first episode, I still remember watching the first episode, Flintstone Flyer, where Fred and Barney invent like a helicopter type thing, of course, powered by Fred's feet, which was great. Also, a lot of guest appearances happened on the Flintstones. It was hot at the time. If you remember Batman in '66, a lot of actors were just dying to be on the show. They wanted to be on Batman as a guest star. Well, the Flintstones predated that. They had quite a few guest stars appear in cartoon form back in the day, just like The Simpsons has been doing for the past however long now. Another great fact about the Flintstones was the theme song, which everybody knows, Flintstones meet the Flintstones, right? That's what you always hear. But in the first two seasons, they didn't have that theme song. So the theme song Meet the Flintstones wasn't even introduced until the third season. It was actually first introduced on a children's record performed by the TV cast and included verses about Barney and Betty Rubble as well as Dino. In the first two seasons, they used an instrumental piece of music called Rise and Shine, which is also available on YouTube if you want to hear it. And it's used in quite a few of the episodes as background music as well. It's also very similar to the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show theme called Overture. When the series went into syndication, a series of standardized set of opening and closing credits was used in order to get rid of in the first two seasons, the Flintstones, one of their sponsors was Winston Cigarettes. So in order to get rid of those spots, they cut out those spots and then they brought in the new theme song to, on top of that so that they could blank out the Winston commercials. There's actually 166 original episodes of the Flintstones between those 6 years. Now, also, Pebbles Flintstone was originally supposed to be a boy. But they changed it to a girl because they said that they could sell more Pebbles dolls to females than they could male dolls at the time. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to put them in the comments. Again, this is my first live stream, so there might be some hiccups here and there. I'm not really used to doing these live streams, but I wanted to really get into the live stream setting. And I'm going to be doing some interviews upcoming. Actually, right now I have an interview scheduled on Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time with the great author Mark Zicree, who did the Twilight Zone Companion back in, I believe it was the first edition was in 1992. And if you like the Twilight Zone, which I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan, if you haven't watched my video on that, check it out. I love the Twilight Zone. He's going to be on talking about a new Twilight Zone project that he's working on. So stop back if you get a chance. That's 4 o'clock this coming Wednesday, Thanksgiving Eve. And Mark's going to be on with me. So we'll be talking sci-fi, science fiction, and about his new project. Now back to the Flintstones. They actually, back in '64, they tried to capitalize on the craze, the monster craze, when the Addams Family and the Munsters came out. They actually had a new family was introduced called the Gruesomes. And the wife, Creepella, and their son, Gobby, were introduced in the 5th season as the Flintstones' newest neighbors. So that was a pretty cool thing, but they only appeared in 2 episodes. Now, the birth of Pebbles was a major worldwide sensation at the time. TV networks around the world held viewer contests to pick names, weight, sexes, and other aspects of the birth. It was a real happening. The night that Wilma told Fred she was pregnant, which was January 25th of 1963, the end of the show featured a voiceover where a narrator said, "That's right, folks, the Flintstones are going to have a baby, and you can win a trip around the world." Somebody actually did win that trip around the world. The contest was to pick Pebble's birth weight, and the winner, which was a Florida butcher, received a round the world trip plus $2,000 spending cash. Debbie wants to know, isn't it true that the Flintstones was written for an adult crowd originally? Yeah, it was actually based on the Honeymooners. And, that type of humor was supposed to appeal to adults, which was why they went in the primetime, slot, as it were. I think it was on 7 or 7:30 in the evening on Friday evenings. At least that's what I remember. My memory might not be too great anymore, but that's what I remember when I remember seeing it. And it was great because just like the Bullwinkle show, there was a lot of humor in there that went right over the head of children and that adults could enjoy. So it was definitely there was definitely a large adult audience for the Flintstones as well, because it entertained both adults and children. I hope that answers that question, Debbie. The Flintstones had 3 addresses during the series' 6 seasons run: 222 Rocky Way, 345 Stone Cave Road, and then 301 Cobblestone Way. The final official address was 301 Cobblestone Way, Bedrock, 70777. It's actually the real zip code for Slaughter, Louisiana. You got a drink of water here. I'm starting to get dry. I hope you guys have been enjoying my videos. I put a lot of effort into research, and I just put a lot of love into my videos. I record every single one myself. I do all the voiceovers. I do all the editing work. I download all the various images. And the music I do get off of several sites that I subscribe to. One of them being the Great Epidemic Sound. And, as I said, I put a lot of love into all my videos. It might take me a little bit longer than some people to come up with the final creation. But, before I put it out there, I go over it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that everything kind of fits together properly, that the music, the backing track goes along with the actual tone of the video. So there really is a lot of love in those videos. I don't rush anything. If I have an idea, I'll put days and days of research and writing and rewriting into it until it really comes out the way I want it to. Not everything is going to be a gem, obviously. But there are, the ones that do come out really well, I'm very, very proud of. So thanks for the likes, guys. Now, the original Flintstones unaired pilot, which again you can find on YouTube, is called The Flagstones. It was produced in 1959. It's only 102 seconds long. The series was intended to be called The Flagstones, but the title was changed when the creators of the comic strip High and Lois, which was a spin-off of Beetle Bailey, by the way, about a suburban American family named the Flagstones, threatened a possible lawsuit. So they changed the Stone Age family's last name to Flintstone before the actual first episode was produced and went on the air. In fact, I just watched that on YouTube the other night. It's different because you have the great Dawes Butler, who did the voice of Yogi Bear, actually did the voice of both Fred and Barney in the episode. If you watch it, you'll hear the difference. There are still like tones of what Alan Reed was going to do with Fred and what Mel Blanc did with Barney. It still had kind of the tone of their voices, but you can tell, once Alan Reed and Mel Blanc took over, that they kind of took the feel of the original Dawes Butler voices and went off in their own direction, and of course made it their own. And Mel Blanc was actually, there was actually a group of episodes that he couldn't do Barney because he had been in a terrible car accident, and they had to replace him for several episodes. Mel Blanc, of course, I'm sure if you're watching this station, if you're watching this live stream or my channel, I'm sure you know that Mel Blanc was the man of 1,000 voices. He did so many voices, so many incredible voices, that it's really hard to believe how much he actually did and how different the voices were. You know, the voice of Bugs Bunny and then the voice of Barney Rubble. And, you know, I could go on and on. It's just amazing how many voices Mel Blanc did. Seth wants to know, what do you think of the new Star Trek these days? Do you think Gene Roddenberry is rolling over in his grave yet? Well, yeah, I don't think that the new Star Trek is really going in the direction that Gene Roddenberry set for the show. I'm a huge original Star Trek fan. I love Star Trek The Next Generation. I even watched Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And the new show just doesn't do it for me. I watched the whole first season. Actually, I watched the first 2 seasons because I just hoping that we get better. And it just, you know, shows are good, in my opinion, because number one, the characters are interesting. And number two, the stories are well written. And it just seems like there's there's no point to a lot of their stories. They just kind of go on, you know, without the kind of characterization and the kind of story that Gene Roddenberry would have put into the original Star Trek concept, which was, the original Star Trek, in my opinion at least, the stories were just incredible. You really cared about the characters. You cared about what was going to happen to the characters. And they did weave, political stuff into the show and what was happening, in the country in those days. But they did it using alien societies. And it was just done in such a way that it was super interesting what was going to happen to these characters. And City on the Edge of Forever is probably the best example of the best Star Trek episode ever written or produced. And you can still watch it today, and it still gives me chills. So, that's my take on the new Star Trek. I keep hoping for the best. I watched the whole first season of Picard, and it was okay. I enjoyed certain aspects. I love seeing Patrick Stewart, and I love seeing Data again. And so the nostalgia factor was great for Picard, and I am curious to see what they do the second season. I don't hold a lot of hope of it being Star Trek, but we'll see. We'll see next year, I guess. Debbie says he probably loves that Captain Kirk really went into space. Yeah, Captain Kirk actually did go into space. Seth says, I couldn't put it better myself, my friend. Thank you. Well, my friend, I'm glad that you share my opinion on that. I really do. I hope for the best for Star Trek. I really do. A lot of these remakes just don't have the essence of the original series. I feel the same way about things like The Twilight Zone and the different remakes of The Outer Limits. They had their moments. They have some decent moments, but it doesn't seem like they actually get the core feel of the original creators. I mean, who could really duplicate Rod Serling? There is only one Rod Serling. And I can still go back and watch those original Twilight Zone episodes. And, they still give me chills again. The writing is just incredible. But Rod's characterization, which was his strong point, was just, you could tell a Rod Serling episode. It was unbelievable. Even some of his Night Gallery stuff is still great. It's still excellent stuff, even though it is kind of dated a little bit. But, not all of Night Gallery, in my opinion, was great, but a lot of Rod stuff was still really, really excellent. Back to the Flintstones. So, so Pebble's birth in the Flintstones, The Blessed Event, which was aired in 1963, was the 84th of the 167 episodes. There are 83 episodes before and 83 episodes after the birth. On a pre-recorded DVD, Blu-ray disc, or VHS tape, it has a substitute title of Dress Rehearsal. So that's funny. That's something I didn't know. There are actually the same amount of episodes before the birth and the same amount of episodes after the birth of Pebbles. Now, the Flintstones' house size, design, and furniture change in almost every episode. The Rubble's house figure is almost always different when it is shown, which is rare. However, it is shown in the Flintstones' Little Bam Bam. The Flintstones was at one time the longest-running primetime animation cartoon weekly series. Of course, The Simpsons took that record way back in 1966. However, it's still the longest-running Hanna-Barbera studio production. Yeah, the Simpsons is crushing it. I can't believe that it's still going. Yeah, Hollywood is creatively bankrupt as we speak. I agree with you, Seth. I do not believe we will see an original entity coming out of them anytime soon. Isn't that the truth? It's just they just take these old franchises and they just rework them and just churn them out. They don't come up with any original ideas. I think the last recent movie that I really enjoyed was Joker, because it was a one-off. It wasn't the Joker character as in Batman. It was the Joker was his own character, his own villain, in a really gripping, dramatic story, and kind of a depressing story. It wasn't a real uplifting superhero type of story, but it was an excellent film as well. Since then, I don't. Getting off on a tangent here, but like the Marvel, TV shows and films this year had some moments in them that weren't too bad, but all in all, the movies really haven't done it for me either. So that was just a quick aside there. I don't want to get too far astray here. I did want to talk some more about the primetime cartoons of the 60s. So Seth asks, how many years were they doing those cigarette ads? As far as I can determine, it looks like they were doing it the first 2 seasons, Seth. So the first 2 years of the Flintstones. They had that Winston ending at the end of the episode, where Fred takes the cat out and they have Winston on the sign. And as far as the ads go, they actually did a beer ad as well. I had it in one of the videos that I took down, that I may be putting back up again. So look for my ads of the past videos, and you may see that again. But if you look on YouTube, you can find it on YouTube. Hey Lance, what's up? Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it. I hope you've been checking out the channel. Maybe you've seen some of my old videos, or if you haven't, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you'd like. I do appreciate it. Loanna the Shell People, I love that name. The investors in Hollywood don't want to put up a lie in order to finance an unknown property. Yeah, that is true. I mean, everything is costing so much more these days. They're putting so much more money into these projects that it's nice to see a film like Ghostbusters Afterlife, which apparently only cost about $75 million. But then you had a film like The Eternals that I think their budget was over $200 million. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe in the $250 million range. You just can't keep putting out sums like that and expect to make money back on the project. I think that Hollywood needs to really just scale everything down and cut back on the budgets. cut back on the budgets, maybe concentrate more on great stories like Joker. How much did Joker cost? It was less than $100 million. I forget the exact number. And it made $1 billion. That's what Hollywood needs. It needs more good storytelling. And I agree. They don't want to put the money out for these big budget films if they don't know what the property is. But look at James Bond. James Bond is a great property. It's been out since the 60s. There's how many films? 25 films. And they just put more and more money into it. And then when you have a disappointment, it's going to lose a lot of money. So even a property that you would think is a guaranteed moneymaker doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make money on the project. So what does it cost to try something, something new, put a little less money into it, and try to come up with some new ideas, some new concepts, instead of just rehashing the same things over and over again? Luana, the Eternals hasn't really performed that well. No, right at this point, maybe it'll break even, maybe it won't. It's probably not going to make any money. I'm sure it's a big disappointment to Marvel. But we'll see what happens. Don't know if there'll ever be an Eternals 2. Okay, back to the Flintstones. So the phrase "yabba dabba doo" was thought up after Alan Reed told Hanna-Barbera creators that his mother was once fond of the long-running and now expired Brill Cream's hairstyling slogan, "A little dabble do you." That's pretty funny. Yabba dabba doo, a little dabble do you. So actually, the first episode made of the Flintstones was called The Flintstones, the Swimming Pool. It was the first made, but it was not the first aired. It was held back after debuting The Flagstones, but not the first one aired. That was because co-directors Hanna-Barbera felt that Fred and Barney's quarreling would not be a good way to begin the new series. Therefore, the third episode of the series, The Flintstone Flyer, was actually the first one to air, following the pilot, which was never aired. The Swimming Pool was the fourth one aired, and the third was The Flintstones Hot Lips Hannigan. Now, along with the Flintstones, Hanna-Barbera came up with another idea a couple of years later. The Flintstones debuted in 1960. And then they decided, well, the Flintstones are doing pretty well in the prehistoric age. So I have an idea. Let's do something in the future. What they came up with was the Jetsons. So for all you guys that were Flintstone fans, I'm sure you probably watched the Jetsons as well. The Jetsons actually in prime time only aired for one season from 1962 to 1963. Now here's something really interesting, and I didn't know this either. The Jetsons were the first program ever to be broadcast in color on ABC TV. Wow, no idea. I guess Gone with the Wind will be next. Yeah, we're gonna do a remake of Gone with the Wind. West Side Story shouldn't have been touched. Yeah, there's a lot of things that probably should never be redone, that you could just never do them as well. Yep, the Jetsons. The Jetsons, another episode of another Hanna-Barbera show, The Flintstones, in which the Flintstones and the Rubbles use a time machine at the World's Fair to travel to the future. So, yeah, it's funny. The Jetsons only ran originally for 24 episodes during the 62-63 TV season. They revived the show in 1985 with new episodes designed to syndicate alongside the originals. So they made it look as if it was part of the original package, but it really wasn't. The Jetsons flying car was inspired by a 1954 Ford concept car, the FX Atmos. Notable for its all-glass bubble canopy, dashboard radar screen, and jet plane-like tail fins. Wow. What do you guys think? There'll ever be Jetson cars? Will there ever be flying cars? The better question might be, should there ever be flying cars? I don't know. There's a lot of accidents now. Could you imagine if anybody could just take off in their car and go flying around? I mean, how would you have roads in the sky? I guess they'd have to be all programmed, all computer programmed, but they can't even get that down yet here on Earth. So I know Elon Musk is trying to do it, and from what I understand, Apple is trying to come up with their own self-driven cars, but flying cars? Back in the day, I thought that, I think a lot of us did growing up, that by the year 2000, we were going to have the Jetsons. There were going to be flying cars. There was going to be those big, tall buildings up into the sky, into the clouds, into the stratosphere. But it didn't happen, and I don't really see it happening anytime soon. But computer technology has really taken off. Whoever saw that? Whoever saw that using your phone, right? That your phone itself was going to have more computing power than the rocket ships that went to the moon in the 60s. But the Great Gazoo. Yeah, Debbie, I love the Great Gazoo. I thought he was great. That was another character that came along a couple of years in, a couple of seasons in. And I would have liked more of the Great Gazoo, personally. Yeah, Seth, yeah, you have to worry about a Cadillac falling on your head. Yeah, that's a good point. Did you imagine, like, running out of fuel while you're, 100 feet up in the air and you just come crashing down onto somebody's head or into somebody's house or something? A flying car would be very dangerous, Luana. That's a good point. Maxwell Smart. Well, yeah, I'll tell you that, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just because I grew up watching those 60s programs. But there were some great ones. Get Smart was another one of my favorites. The great Mel Blanc also, I believe he created it or was a writer on that show. Not Mel Blanc. I'm thinking of Mel Brooks. Speaking of Mel Brooks, what great movies did he put out in the 70s? Oh. I just caught the tail end of High Anxiety the other day on the TCM channel. It was great. Do you remember the show The Space Cadets? Yeah, actually, no, that I'm not sure I remember The Space Cadets, Seth. What year was that on? I do remember Fireball XL5. If any of you ever like those puppet shows like the Thunderbirds. But my personal favorite was Fireball XL5. Steve Zodiac. I wish I were a spaceman, the fastest man alive. Yeah, Fireball XL5. I love that whole opening where the ship just goes up the ramp and takes off into space. Love Get Smart. Yes, I love Get Smart, Luana. That show was awesome. Maxwell Smart had the first cell phone. Yeah, hey, that's a good point. He had the shoe phone. Mel Brooks also created a show called When Things Were Rotten. Yep, Captain Action. Thanks for that input. When Things Were Rotten, I don't remember that one. Was that also a 60s show, Captain? Anyway, back to the Jetsons. The Jetson clan appeared in print ads for Electrosol dishwasher tabs and were the subject of a series of collectible tins in 2004 and 5. Rosie's name for Elroy was Roy Boy. There's a couple of good trivia things here for the Jetsons. But another show that predates both the Flintstones and the Jetsons and was on Primetime for a little bit on Sunday nights. I believe it was before the before the Wonderful World of Disney, and that was the Bullwinkle Show. It wasn't a primetime cartoon as such because it didn't last long in that time slot, but it did predate the Flintstones and the Jetsons as a primetime cartoon. It just didn't last that long in prime time. But it did last for several years, and was another show like the Flintstones that was also written with adult humor in mind, where there was a lot of humor that, the kids could laugh at, but that their parents could also appreciate. And it's still great to watch them today. When Things Were Rotten was a lot like Robin Hood Men in Tights. And Seth, I think the Space Cadets was late 60s, early 70s. It was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Maybe that's why I missed it. I'm kind of an older guy. As I said in the beginning, I was born in 1954. By the time the late 60s rolled around, I was getting into things like the Beatles and Woodstock and not watching as many cartoons. I actually missed the whole Scooby-Doo generation in the 70s. Which I'm kind of sad about. But I did get to watch the Beatles cartoons in the 60s and also the Monkees and a lot of great shows again in the 60s. But when it came to the 70s, I kind of missed a lot of those, the cartoon type stuff. Does anybody remember Gigantor, the giant robot? That was another one I liked to watch. And I believe that was in syndication, because I used to watch it in the afternoons when I came home from school. What's the difference between Dubai and Abu Dhabi? I don't know, Gary. I don't know. What do you think the difference is? So Seth says they've been showing me old Pink Panther Inspector Clouseau cartoons lately. I've been really digging those. Yeah, that's another one, Seth. That's another great cartoon. They never made Primetime, but that along with the old Mr. Magoo cartoons were also both great cartoons. Rocky and Bullwinkle is the only thing on Sundays. Yeah, Rocky and Bullwinkle was on Sundays. They were on Sunday nights. And then eventually they were on in the afternoons. Space Cadets was like the Little Rascals in space. Yes, Captain Action, that's it. Yeah, you know what? I might have to check out some Space Cadets now, Captain. So if you ever watch Bullwinkle, I used to love the segments with Mr. Peabody and the Time Machine. Mr. Peabody and his pet boy Sherman. What a great concept. Then they had the Wayback Machine, which actually spelled W-A-B-A-C, but pronounced Wayback. It resembles a computer. Well, that it was basically, but it took up the entire room in the office building. How about this? How many people out there know that Mr. Peabody had a first name? And if you knew it, did you know what his first name was? I'll give you a couple of minutes on that one. Oh, on the trivia page, it says that Mr. Peabody was modeled after actor Clifton Webb. Anybody know the first name of Mr. Peabody? Seth, you used to watch Gigantor as a kid? Yeah, I loved that show. Who doesn't love giant robots? Jimmy Sparks used to control Gigantor with a remote control? I didn't know that either, Captain. Debbie, it was Mr. Mr. Peabody. Spot Peabody? All right, I'll tell you. It was actually his first name was actually Hector, for what it's worth. I do have a video up on the Bullwinkle Show if any of you are interested in watching it. And after doing all this research on the Flintstones, I think I might have a Flintstones video coming up as well. So the last show I wanted to talk about here, this was another one-season primetime cartoon. And I believe the year it came out was 1963. And that was Jonny Quest. Now, Jonny Quest was a different cartoon from any of these other cartoons. It was not your typical, cartoon for laughs kind of show. It was a cartoon adventure. And it was done with really, really great stories and had a lot of great technology in it. Like jetpacks and flying cars, and it was just a great cartoon, but it only lasted one season. It was originally intended to be a cartoon version of the classic radio serial Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy. Now, it was the first adventure and science fiction cartoon for television that wasn't taking place in a fictional world. Each one of the 26 episodes, yes, there were only 26 episodes of the original Jonny Quest, had its story happening in some real place on planet Earth. So, what I really loved about Jonny Quest was the adventure part of it. It was unlike any other cartoon I had ever seen on television, and this was before the live action shows started coming out that I really got into, like Star Trek, Lost in Space, The Outer Limits. Actually, The Outer Limits might have been around the same time, and of course Twilight Zone was on, but I didn't really get to see too many Twilight Zones when they first came out because it was on later and I wasn't staying up late. I watched most of those in repeats later. But I did get to watch some of The Outer Limits when it first came on. Me and my brother, I remember watching the episode, the Xanthi Misfits, which were those little, not little, but those big like ant-like creatures that were crawling on their back and coming down off the buildings. They were actually aliens from that were in prison on another planet, and the aliens brought them to Earth and released them here. So a lot of those memories of The Outer Limits, what a frightening show that was to me in those days. I think I must have been like 9 years old at the time. They were just frightening. But I loved them. I loved watching those shows. And then shows like Lost in Space and Star Trek came along. And, as well as a lot of other great shows like The Time Tunnel, Land of the Giants, Get Smart. It wasn't just science fiction shows that I liked to watch in the 60s. There were a lot of great shows that I watched in the 60s. But as far as Jonny Quest goes, that was my first real exposure to adventure series that I really got into. And later on in life that got me, well, actually I got into comic books as well at the time in the early 60s and into the mid 60s and started reading a lot of comic books and eventually got into drawing comic books, which if you look up on my wall back here, in case any of you are wondering, they're original pages from comic books that I actually worked on back in the 80s. The 80s and the early 90s, I did a lot of work in comics for DC, Marvel. I worked for Comico, the comic company. If any of you are into comic books, let me know in the comments. But, the shows that I watched as a kid really influenced my interests as an adult, which I'm sure is the same with every one of you. So they've been playing the old black and white Popeyes lately. Oh, that's really cool. I love those old black and white Popeyes. There was some great animation by the Fleischer Studio, which also did the original Superman cartoons. I used to love the Star Trek animated cartoon from the 70s. That was another one that they actually used voice, the actual actors actually voiced their characters for the most part on that show. And Gene Roddenberry actually, felt that show was an extension of the live action Star Trek. So there were a lot of great episodes on there. The animation wasn't that great, but the stories themselves were great. The Surf Man was a great Twilight Zone episode, Debbie. That's for sure. That's one of my favorites. Well, it's hard to say what my favorite Twilight Zone episode was because I love so many of them. I just wish they were making content that was that rich and that, that engrossing again on TV. There's some good TV shows that I've watched. I mean, Breaking Bad I thought was good. I enjoyed Dexter. There were some good shows that I enjoyed. But, they've kind of lost their naivete anymore on new, the new stuff. To me, I like the innocence of the older shows. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I enjoy the innocence of the old TV shows and the old movies, for that matter. I just love going back and watching old 50s sci-fi or even just 50s, mystery and action movies. Old Hitchcock stuff. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. That's for sure. Now, the first season of Lost in Space I thought was great. They're in black and white, especially the first 5 episodes, which were, almost all filmed at the same time, except for, I think, the 4th episode. And then they chopped them up. They added in Dr. Smith, and a lot of it was adventure stuff. But, of course, later on, they started getting a little bit more comical and, less serious space adventure. But it was still incredibly popular. In fact, even after 3 seasons, they were still doing well, but the show was canceled after 3 seasons. Do I remember Clutch Cargo? Oh, yeah. Cartoons with the moving lips. Yeah, they were great. Sure, I watched Clutch Cargo. The one where William Shatner spots a gremlin on the window of his plane was really scary. Yeah, that's another classic episode that they redid. I think they redid it a couple of times, but I know it was at least redone once in the movie. But how can you equal the original Twilight Zone episode with William Shatner? Even as hokey as the costume was, just the acting by Shatner was just superb. And the story itself was incredible. Did you like Quantum Leap? Yeah, I love Quantum Leap. In fact, I heard rumor that they might be trying to start it up again. I'm not really sure about that. I don't know how that would do now, but that's something that I heard on the grapevine. So we'll see. Do you like the 60s campy Batman? I have to say I do like the 60s campy Batman. In its place, you can't take it as serious Batman, obviously. But the comic books in the 60s, they were kind of campy too. So I think the show kind of took, well, actually, I'm not sure who started the campy before what, because around the same time, the comic books were kind of campy as well. So you have to say, you have to look at what the time was. And at the time, Batman was just kind of campy, but I did enjoy it. And especially the first season, when I saw those first episodes with the Riddler and Frank Gorshin's Riddler, I thought was amazing. So I really enjoyed those. And Burgess Meredith as the Penguin. Oh yeah, yeah. I thought there were some great episodes. I even enjoyed the movie. So, but then again, I've enjoyed every version of Batman, including the most recent ones. And I just like the character, and Superman as well. I think I like Superman more than Batman, and I really don't think that they've done Superman a lot of justice recently. You know, I mean, Christopher Reeve's Superman in the '70s was incredible. He's a great Superman, a great Clark Kent. Um, but anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. Oh, they still show reruns of Lost in Space on MeTV. Yeah, oh, that's great. I don't get MeTV, but I do own every season of Lost in Space. So, whenever I want to watch them, I can pop them in. I own all the Twilight Zone episodes as well. Any of those old shows that I really really loved, I'll go out and I'll buy the DVDs, or I'll buy them off of iTunes or something, because I want to be able to watch them when I want to watch them. I don't want commercials or anything. I don't know. The MeTV, I'm assuming, shows commercials, or they might chop up the episodes or something. One of the actors from Quantum Leap died recently. Oh, that's a shame. Which one was it? I think Scott Bakula is still alive. Ronnie, you're not into TV. Do you watch the movies, or is there anything in media that you like to watch, or what are you into? Leslie Nielsen in Forbidden Planet, yeah, another great movie, Seth. I like the original black and white Superman. So yeah, so the first season? The first couple of seasons. I forget exactly when Adventures of Superman went to color. But yeah, the original first season of The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves, no relation to Christopher Reeve. That first season was a little bit more violent than the rest of them. The rest of the seasons were kind of oriented towards children. But if you watch some of that first season, Superman gets into fights with criminals. I mean, he's actually punching criminals, which if Superman actually did that, they'd be going through a wall. So it was kind of like kind of a little weird, but they did have some great gritty superhero stuff in that first season. Heroes and Icons Network shows reruns of the George Reeves Superman. Oh, cool. I didn't know if they were actually still being shown at all. Oh, John Lithgow played William Shatner's part in the movie. And I love John Lithgow. I just didn't think it was, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe just because I like the original that I really didn't like the remake that much. Oh, Superman's first 2 seasons were in black and white. Okay. And then, of course, they had the change in Lois Lane's after the first season. I think the first season, Lois Lane was a little bit more on the serious reporter side. And then they went with Noel Neill for the rest of the seasons. And she was a little bit like softer edge to her. Still enjoyed it, though. So I really enjoyed her. And also Jimmy Olsen, I thought was the quintessential Jimmy Olsen with the bow tie. And so I hope you guys are enjoying this first stream. It's got some growing pains. I'm not really used to streaming. I'm an older guy. I like technology, but it was a little tough for me to get this whole thing together here. And I'm doing my best here. I'd like to do a live stream on a regular basis. If you guys would like to see it, I'd love to have you back. I am going to be doing another live stream this coming Wednesday with author Mark Scott Zicree, who also wrote the Twilight Zone Companion back in the early 90s. And it's a very informative book on all the Twilight Zone episodes, all the behind the scenes stuff. It's got a lot of behind the scenes pictures that you don't see anywhere. And he's also written for a lot of great science fiction shows like Star Trek: The Next Generation. And he's just been in the industry for a long, long time. In fact, he has his own YouTube channel. If you want to check out Mr. Sci-Fi, that's Mark. Check him out. Subscribe to him. He actually produced a movie that came out last year, and he does a lot of science fiction writing, and writes for a lot of different shows and everything. So Mark's really an interesting guy. So if you get a chance, stop back 4 o'clock Eastern time this Wednesday, and I'll have him on the show. Yeah, Superman appeared on I Love Lucy. I do remember that. It was actually George Reeves appeared in character as Superman, which was pretty funny. I liked I Love Lucy too, but I didn't really get to watch them in its original run. I watched them in reruns. Another show I really loved back in the day was Sea Hunt, which I also didn't get to watch in the original run, but I watched them in repeats. And I'd watch them all the time. I love that show. And there were a couple of westerns I really enjoyed too. The Rifleman was another one that I just loved. Chuck Connor's The Rifleman. I would sit there every Friday I'd get a pizza from this local pizza place it was called New England Pizza, of all things. And it was like a personal sized pizza. And I'd just sit there or watch The Rifleman on Fridays eating my pizza. Just a little side story there. You've been married to Lucy for 20 years and they call me Superman. Yeah, sad about what happened to George Reeves. Yeah, they did make a movie about it, which I saw. I still don't think they really know what happened. It's still kind of a mystery. They say he committed suicide. Other people say he was shot at close range. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to say. Sea Hunt was the original Aquaman. Yeah, that's a good point. He wasn't actually like a superhero, but Mike Nelson, man. Mike Nelson. I wanted to be Mike Nelson. He was just, he was strong. He was handsome. He got that scuba gear on. He'd go diving. He'd go saving people. And, and the narration was great on that show as well. I love Sea Hunt. That was a show that didn't run on the networks originally. It actually started off as a syndicated show. And was extremely popular. Extremely popular. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Again, please stop back for Mark Zicree on Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. And if you have anything you'd like to talk about in future live streams, leave it in the comments. I would love to be able to take some of your ideas and talk about them, especially about 50s, 60s, even 70s TV shows and movies, all the classic stuff. That's what this channel is all about. So I hope you enjoyed the stream today, guys. I'm going to be signing off now, but hopefully I'll see you on Wednesday. So thank you, everybody, for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. This has been a great experience. And I hope to see you all again on Wednesday. And I'm going to try to get a regular schedule going for these. I'm just not sure what night yet. Why don't you give me an idea? Maybe I'll do a poll. What night, what time that would be best for you guys for these live streams. So let me know in the comments, and I'll check out every one of them. And I appreciate every single one of you guys. Thank you so much for supporting my channel and coming out for this first live stream. All right, guys, this is Rich from Rerun Zone signing off. And hopefully I see you again soon. And look for new videos from me in the next week or so. I am working on a couple of things right now. And, I should have something out by the end of the week. If not, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. And I'll see you, hopefully I'll see you before Thanksgiving on Wednesday. Take care.